It's just taking a minute, but we'll be okay on YouTube.
Sounds perfect.
Great. Hello, and welcome to Note Investing Made Easier. I'm your host, Martin Sines. Thank you for joining us today. We have a very special guest, Tim Griffith with exchangeloans.com. And before we go into our session with Tim, I'm going to just make one quick announcement. On next Friday and Saturday, we have our next Note Investing Fundamentals Workshop here in lovely Washington, D.C., and that'll be on September 27th and 28th. So there's 5 spots left, and please come and register, and we look forward to seeing you. So without further ado, we have Tim. Welcome to the program. How are you, sir?
I'm doing perfect. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. It's great we finally connected, and I don't think you do too many of these podcasts, do you?
No, this is my first one. It's not probably my first one.
Good. Well, awesome. Well, I'm glad it's with me. I appreciate that. So tell me about, how did you make your way into the note industry?
Sure. So it's a family business. That's how I got in. I started in high school in the mailroom, scanning documents, learning a little bit here or there. And then towards the end of college, I started coming in full time. I started in the boarding department, and I hit almost every department after that to learn the full 360 of the note world.
Great. So family business for those who don't recognize the name, you want to just kind of give us your background. What company are we talking about?
Sure. So we're talking about FCI Lender Services. That's the nation's largest private servicer. And then my dad started that in 1982. So long time ago. I came in, I think 2009, around there, 2008, 2009. So it's been part of my life the whole time. But then I started, understanding the business, learning the whole thing, just about 10 years now.
Great. So you've had, you have, is it safe to say you've seen most everything go on in the note space?
Well, I've certainly heard about it, not firsthand, but I've seen the peaks, the valleys, the good, the bad. It's an interesting field.
What are we in now? Are we in a peak or a valley?
I kind of think we're in a valley. I think prices are going to come down here soon. So that's at least because I feel like non-performing loans have been higher than I've ever seen them, at least in my experience. And I think they're going to come down. And I think property values are going to come down too, which is, make sure you're buying right is how I feel.
Yeah, that's a very good point. So, a lot of people often overlook that. They just say, well, prices have gone up, but they don't consider that equity positions have increased as well.
Yep. There's some of those. We'll get a BPO, think we're great, then foreclose 3 years down the road. It's 25% less what we thought it would be. Don't make what we wanted, but it's all part of the game.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's kind of interesting, you and I talked at IMN last June, and, we had a nice in-depth conversation on, why the name change, why the rebranding effort from FCI Exchange, which is kind of an exchange platform. And you want to just kind of tell us, what brought about the change? Sure.
So FCI Exchange was started in, I want to say 2008, and that was before I had gotten there. And the idea is FCI Lender Services is a fund servicing department, and this is a tough lesson I've learned personally as well dealing in notes. You always think that the worst case scenario with notes is that maybe the property isn't worth what you thought it would be, like we just talked about. But sometimes what can happen is when you're borrowing money to buy these loans, what the actual worst case scenario can be is that it starts performing at a low interest rate. And now you're borrowing money at, say, 6%, and it's only paying at 3%. So that's what the FCI Exchange was born out of, is we wanted people to have a liquidating option through FCI. So then they could just list it on FCI Exchange. Someone else could buy it. They could, not take that monthly loss on the payment. So that went until 2018. And what was happening is we have a buyer and a seller who are two independent third parties. And what would happen is maybe the seller would pull a deal or a buyer would play games or something like that. And there was always this misconception that either the buyer or the seller was FCI themselves. So, a buyer would say, hey, FCI just pulled this deal from me. And maybe they'd post it online or tell someone, when FCI Exchange and FCI Lender Services were always two separate companies, and FCI never did a transaction on there ever. FCI doesn't own any loans. Its entire history, it's never owned a single loan. So it was getting all this bad press and all this misconception. And based on, it'd be like if people thought eBay themselves was buying, your collectibles or whatever. And it's not ever how it worked. So what we decided, we've been talking about it for a while, and then one transaction happened that broke the camel's back on that. And we decided to change to exchange loans. So get the name FCI out of it. It was just creating too much misconception. So we switched to exchange loans. It's going well. It's been it's so funny. We've had people, when we said we were closing FCI Exchange, people were like, wow, FCI just closed. That's so, how could that have happened? And it's just misconception all around. So I feel like the word's gotten out that it's now Exchange Loans, totally separate company from FCI and FCI Exchange. And it's going well now. It was a little bit of a hurdle to get, people on board with it all, but it's starting to smooth out.
Good. And what were some, obviously, understanding what kind of drove you to that point of having to start a new entity and making that clean separation from the FCI name. But what was some of the lessons learned, like where you said, hey, we're going to do it now. So you almost have a fresh start, right? A clean slate to go and rebuild this and look at all the issues you had before and tweak things. So what are some of those things that you did differently this go around?
From Exchange Loans to FCI Exchange?
Yeah, from FCI Exchange to now Exchange Loans.
So one of the main ones is I've really cut back on development. I started to find that we could make FCI Exchange as fancy. We would pour thousands of dollars in programming into that site to, I thought if we take it from this many steps to here, if we add this button, just our closings would go through the roof. And it never really worked that way. And what I kept finding is people just want Excel sheets. That's really all they want. That's how they, at least I tend, because we would get emails every day. How can I download this into an Excel? And we would always tell them no at FCI Exchange. And now at Exchange Loans, it saves me a lot of programming fees, and it gives everyone what they want. So that's the biggest lesson, is maybe just doing it as simply as possible is what's right for everyone, right for me as business costs, and then right for the buyers and sellers, who I think more people look at it as an Excel than there's a difference in Zillow when you're looking at houses to buy and loans. Loans are so much more detailed. There's so much more information you want to see, and people seem to have these ways to buy. Everyone's a little different, but people want to cut up that data differently, and to make a one-size-fits-all on a site. We've seen our numbers go up pretty well based on the Excel formula.
Yeah, like all I work on is Excels. If I'm working on a multi-million-dollar pool, or I'm working on a few notes, I want to see an Excel, and then I plug it into my own format, Excel format.
Copy and paste it over. Yep.
And then I do what I need to do. So if I see a new format that I have to learn, then I don't feel like I'm in my groove with it.
Yeah, and there's also, I've had some other ones where it's a different format, and maybe I've spent a lot of time on 5 or 6 and they're not penciling out. And sometimes it's it's just not worth it. I'll wait until, and I hate to be like that, but I feel like time is our, the biggest thing you're fighting against, especially with loans. You don't want a better deal to be sitting out there when you're wasting time on something else. So I just want to be as conscious of people's time as possible. And I think an Excel is the way to do that. We don't need anything fancier.
Yeah, that's the way the industry works. And so I will say this, with FCI Exchange, you did have the all the portfolio analysis, or that note analysis tool and stuff like that. That's good when you're just first starting out and you're kind of you haven't built your systems and everything else. But I think what you're doing is the right way, because this is what note investors are expecting. They're expecting just an Excel spreadsheet.
I agree. I'd like to it was called the Note Investment Strategy Model, and it would show your different exit strategies. So that's not on Exchange Loans anymore. But if you have a loan serviced at FCI, it's one of the tools on there.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, that's great. And so yeah, I've been using FCI for a long time. So I mean, obviously, you guys have a good system there with the dashboard and everything else, and I
Thank
think
you.
technology wise, you guys really do it. So have you moved over the team? I know Lucy Hernandez, she was always helping me. I've sold a bunch of notes on FCI Exchange. I haven't done anything on exchange loans, but have you brought over the crew?
Yes, exactly. So the same crew all came over. FCI Exchange is officially shut down. We didn't want any lingering problems or any, lingering misconceptions. So that's gone. The whole crew came over to exchange loans.
So what are you tasked with? Is it you have to go out and bring in inventory, right? Is that kind of a
Correct.
function of yourself?
Exactly. So when I meet people at conferences or just around, we add them all to a database. I'll put them into we have email blasts that go out Tuesdays and Thursdays with new tapes. And that's pretty much as far as the marketing goes right now is people get these tapes. It goes out to, I think we're at 1,200 people that blast to right now. And there's a whole thing on internet marketing, but apparently now you have to keep chopping the old people because we were over 10,000, but then it made it look like our open rates were really low. So there's a whole, our IT person said chop all those people out. So it's at 1,200.
You don't want your open rates too low. What does that do if that's?
It's more just for the people it's for the program we use. They want to hit a certain threshold. The guy who set it up explained it all to me. That's not my market area, but you want a really healthy rate. So we have 1,200 people who open it regularly. And that's pretty much all the advertising we do. Someone says, hey, I have a note for sale. There's no fee to send it out. So you might as well see what kind of offers come back. And it's been a good experience. We'll have people who put their asking price and their lowest asking price, and then I'll see the offers that come in, and they'll come in, sometimes they'll come over, but sometimes they'll come in at 50, 60%. And it's one of those things where I think people think the exchange loans they don't have the buyer base, but I think what it actually is no, this is where the market is. If you got 10 offers at this price, that's what the market thinks your note is worth. So I know it's not what sellers want to hear sometimes, but that's realities, is what it is.
Yeah. Obviously, you're just facilitating the transaction.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So the objective is to go and just really build a healthy email list, right? So with people that could be potentially buyers and sellers or both at some point.
Okay. Correct. And then what I'm hoping to do is just because I feel like the biggest problem to people when they get into notes, or just even when you've been in notes for a long time, is finding good loans. Like there's a lot of loans out there, but finding good ones that you feel comfortable investing in, that's the toughest part. And there's something about this business where if someone has a good source, they'll never tell you where it is. So that's what the problem we're trying to solve with Exchange is. At least 2 times a week, hopefully something will come through. And maybe they won't all be home runs, but it's something worth looking into, and it's real easy within Excel.
Yeah, I would say another challenge is what people do during the workout phase. So if you're not really seasoned, or you're still getting ramped up from an education standpoint, you don't know all the tells with the notes. So when you're talking to the bar and the bar's like, I don't have any money, and you don't know where to take it from there. So these are things you kind of learn from doing mods over and over the years.
What I'm finding too is what I would do when I was buying a loan is I would check the value out, make sure it was good, put my offer in, and then instantly I would order a BPO and an O&E. So I'm down, say $180, $200, and then however it comes back, maybe it looks good. But then when I got the servicing comments, when you really read into those, I think that's one of the most critical parts is it would have just been clear if I read the servicing comments first, I would have saved my $200. Like I read one the other day where the house was reconveyed wrongly. So there's no even note to foreclose on. It was gone. And I mean, it looks like they're trying to reverse that, but it's going to be a whole legal process. And, if you didn't see that one note back in 2017, you would have got burnt.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And then this SOL clock is always ticking on you, and
Yep.
just these other
Yep.
variables.
There was one state that I was going in where he was only delinquent, I think, 4 years, but that clock was at 3 years, which was news to me. That seems, I imagine it being 8 or 10 years, but 3 years, that's quick.
Yeah, yeah. Were you able to apply payments, on paper against the loan or the cash?
Well, that one it's one of those things where it has like problem 1, 2, 3, 4, and then that was added on top of it. And I'm like, I think I'm good. So I ended up passing on that one. But if that one looked great and that was the only problem, like we saw one in Hawaii that was in this beautiful high rise ocean view, and it had the statute of limitation problems. And we were willing to, accelerate, do all that sort of stuff, do what we needed to do. But we couldn't agree on price. So I've yet to had to deal with that. But, I'm open to it. It's not a deal killer.
Yeah. So are you a buyer on your own exchange?
Correct. I do look around on there.
Good for you. You know how many people, like even like Joe LaBruna, and I meet people all the time, right? And I'm like, do you buy notes? And they're like, no, but they're surrounded by like a sea of notes, and they kind of see everything that's happened and they don't buy. They're like, nope, I'm good. I'm like, what?
I think you have to. So I buy in other places as well, but I get the emails, and if things aren't moving, then I'll take a swing on them. Sellers don't care who buys them, is what it boils down to. They just want money for their loans. So, yeah. So I invest with my brother and my dad. We have a family investing where we pool our money together, and that's going really well. And what I like about that is that's helped me learn like what I want to see in buying has helped me build the exchange. And that was one of the things is I wouldn't buy on FCI exchange. And when I thought about it, I'm like, if someone made me scroll through all those, like it was a house with no, without being able to pull information, I don't think I'd buy very much on here. And that's what made us move to Excels, because that's really all I want as a buyer.
Yeah. I know like in our world, right, everything is about how sophisticated and robust and this and that, but I like the simplicity of it.
Totally. It's so anti like what Silicon Valley would tell you.
Yeah.
At least I think so. Where it's like, as long as I see, like on FCI, you have LIRS. It's like, I just want to see what the notes are when my payment was made. It doesn't need to be much more than that. That's all the information I need. And with notes, just email me in Excel and I'll email you back my offer. I think that's all you need.
Yeah, you made a good point about servicing comments. I was looking over servicing comments the other day, and I saw the note. Bar called, pretty much like the notes, like Bar called, desperate to start making payments again. I'm like, okay,
I love that one.
I'm like, or Bar called and is giving me the finger over the phone or something like that. Totally. But that tells you a lot of a wealth of information.
Big time. Yeah, you'll see. I think servicing comments are the worst part about buying notes, but they're also the most critical. Like it takes, especially when you're buying a pool, when you have to do 10 or 15 of those, or even 30 or 40, it's probably going to be an hour or 2 hours to read everything. And if you miss something, you might as well just throw that money away. Is the kind of stuff. But they're going to give you a lot of insight into what kind of loan that is, and it's important.
Yeah. Do you do your own workouts, or do you use loss mitigation?
I use FCI for everything.
Yeah.
That's one of the few. So when I was working at FCI, I did every single department except collections. That was one that I don't want to do that one.
Yeah.
That takes a special person to negotiate that kind of stuff, and usually, I mean, I don't know the statistics, but I would assume that people are angry that you're trying to collect, or you're going to hear their sad stories or whatever it is, and that's I'm okay on that.
Yeah, I think what I've seen over the years, because I do my own workouts. I've done my own workouts for the past 6 years, and I think people, when they're ready to talk, it's fine. Like you're not going to ever push someone into a loan mod. I mean, they're they have to be ready to talk, or they have to feel like, hey, the gig is up at this point, or, I have to do something on their side. They feel some sense of urgency, and that's when it all kind of comes together. And as long as, you're respectable and humane and really just kind of working with them so they can afford something. And I think that goes a long way.
I think there's win-win scenarios, and those tend to be the only ones that tend to work. It's got to make sense for them, or you're just going to, I don't know, rattle their cage. My uncle invests with us as well, and he will pick up the phone and call his bar, and he's like, you got to do it. People really respect when the owner calls them and wants to take the time on top of a third-party business. I'll leave that to him.
Yeah, I think what I have found is people like it when you're empowered to help them.
Yep.
So that's
and
really
that you have the
it.
power to do whatever you want.
Yeah, someone's like, hey, Miss Jones, there's $20,000, in past due interest arrears. I know that's a hefty amount that we're talking about. And then you kind of talk to her, what do you have? And she says 4,000. Well, will that strap you? Will that prevent you from being able to afford monthly payments? And yes, okay, well, I have the ability to help you on this and lower this amount and do this and that. So I think that goes a long way with the rapport when you do have the empowerment. Yeah, I'm a fan of your uncles.
One of the strategies I find, though, is when I'm buying loans, like if it comes from maybe like I see in the notes that they're calling, not picking up, or they're getting really angry on the phone, it makes me wonder if the person who was servicing it before maybe had, I don't know if it's an attitude or came off cold, because when we transfer it to FCI and they start getting these different kind of calls, it's almost like there's a relief and we can get them back on the line. So that's always one of the strategies in my back pocket is maybe when it transfers, they'll see this as like, oh, well, maybe they don't know about all that, or maybe I have a clean slate, or they're willing to talk to me. And it tends to work, just having someone friendly who will listen and, have a second shot at it.
Because you guys, I'm sure, are, follow all the, Fair Debt Collection Act. You follow everything to a T,
all that stuff.
And you train your folks to be very professional and polite and understanding and courteous and all that.
And then we have an audit team who listens to their calls. If they, you can't lose your temper, anything like that. All of that is they know that there's a certain box that they have to be within, or it's going to be, FCI can get in trouble. So that keeps it really professional. And I find that you just want someone professional who seems like I'd like to think I'm on their side. I just want them to make payments and them to, it's better to, at least for the most part, with the exception of the thing I said at the beginning when their rate is too low, but it's better for everyone if you just make their payments. For FCI likes it. It's an easier loan to service. I like it because I'm just, getting easy money. And I would hope it's easier than getting all these CFPB calls, letters, that's the true win-win for everyone. But, it happens sometimes.
Are you going to open up things on the exchange for CFDs, commercial paper, business notes? So go ahead.
Correct. So that's open already. So people can list that stuff already. We had a couple CFDs go through. There's less than I thought there would be, at least people selling. We had someone blast a bunch of them, and they didn't really move the needle for some reason. So I don't know if people I wonder if it's like McDonald's, Burger King, it's Carl's Jr. out here. Like, do people see trading platforms as, if I would say our bread and butter at exchange is that like $35,000 to maybe $60,000 note, and people typically buy them in their IRAs. Like, do people see that's what I would go to exchange? But if I want seconds or if I want CFDs, do they go to some other establishment? I'm not sure. That's what I have to imagine, though, with how popular CFDs seem to be. At every conference I go to, everyone's buying CFDs, but I don't see that many of them.
No, I'm not buying. My network, we don't buy CFDs. So I'm pretty much
them either.
Yeah. And hey, you know what? Hats off to the people that know what they're doing and they
I
know
agree.
how to analyze, notes that are written on napkins and all that. Good for them. I just, it's out of my league, because I know some that are doing very well because they really know, they've made it a practice to understand it.
I hear a lot of people who have gotten out of notes, but every time I look into it, like maybe I'm missing some sort of like big wave that's going through. It scares me, and I'll just stick to. It's like Warren Buffett only invests in what he knows, and that's what I'm like. I know notes, and I've done well in them, so I think I'll stick there.
Yeah, it's and then and there's the whole Dodd-Frank and just everything kind of comes into play.
Yeah, and the whole thing with renters, and I don't know. Seems like you're kind of a landlord, which I don't want to mess with that.
Yeah,
So.
lease it's like a lease option, and the
Yeah.
property values are usually on the lower side, and yeah.
So I've tend to be staying away. I've set the cutoff, and even then I'm a little leery. When I first started, I was buying I bought a Michigan pool for very little, and some of those houses were worth $7,000, and I'm just like, I was so eager to get in that that kind of stuff was fine. I was willing to take on all risk, and if I lost all my money, who cares? Because I think I bought, it was like 6 or 7 of these very low Michigan notes. It was like $12,000 or something like that, and I ended up making a little bit of money, but the stress and the worry that it was all going to go down the tubes, it's not worth it. So now I've set my personal limit at 50,000 because I've just had too many problems in foreclosure. There's plenty of money to be made. I know people who specialize under 50,000, but just I'm looking for. I think that's high risk, high reward, and I'm looking for like maybe medium risk, medium reward. That's about where my stomach can handle right now. And then I'm starting to get offered things that are like, I had some that were in the 300,000 range, the properties, that's way higher, and that's a different kind of risk where I don't want to put all my eggs in one basket. So I like that sweet spot, that 50, 100,000, 150, somewhere around there. But I mean, like I don't want to. I have 2 in New York right now, and it's a nightmare. And I've been foreclosing for probably 2.5 years. But I know people on the exchange who they only buy in New York. So everyone has their niche, and everyone can make money. It's just as long as you know the rules, there's money to be made. Like I've always thought about getting a license in Georgia and trying to, because I just pass on Georgia right now. I don't have the license, but there's people who make a living out there, just cleaning up what other people won't touch. And I think that's fantastic.
Yeah, and there's a lot of attorneys now that offer services to help people get set up with the application processes for your servicer license or your lender's license or what have you. And I think that's really smart, because if you're an attorney and you help me get set up, then and I start to foreclose, like who am I going to use, right? I'm going to use.
Yep, you're absolutely going to use them. Yep.
So
that's awesome.
It makes good sense. So tell me about performing notes. Like what do you see works well with performing notes? How much seasoning are we talking about? What are the yield ranges you're seeing out there?
So I've been seeing a lot of lower interest rates where they started performing, and it totally makes sense. Like I'm seeing a lot of loans right now where they have a 2-3% interest rate, and say, I'm just making up numbers, but say their UPB is like, say, 50,000 and the house is worth 600,000. So you just know that's going to pay. They can't get money any cheaper than that. And it will probably never go to foreclosure because they've paid it down too far. But the problem is people want close to 100% on that. But if it goes to foreclosure, you've got just such a tiny, tiny window, especially in some of these states where it's going to take you 200 days. And if you're borrowing that money, I'm seeing a lot of performing notes that aren't penciling out, because if worst case scenario is foreclosure, or worst case scenario is I have to beat that line of credit that I'm borrowing on, or an interest rate, it's a whole different ballgame if you're playing with your own money. But
if you're playing with your own money, it's really just a comfort level in terms of what you want to see as a return, and how and how your due diligence is panned out to show you, your probability of receiving your return. But if you're working the spread, then
it gets scary, and you got to make sure you don't get stuck on it. So I'm seeing a lot of performing notes where people want, sky's the limit prices. But what my fear always is if that stops performing and I have to go to foreclosure, because I paid almost 100% of UPB, and if that place is only worth, say, 70,000, it's not going to work out with foreclosure fees time held, all that sort of thing. So when it comes to seasoning, as long as foreclosure pencils, these are the two things I care about. If foreclosure pencils out worst case scenario, and if the interest rate is good, if it performs, I'm fine writing it any way it goes. If it turns left, I'm good. If it turns right. So it leads me to buy less notes. But, if the economy goes down, if a note stops paying, I'm not on the hook for anything, because I just want to make sure. That's one of the things my dad hammers into people when he talks at these conferences and when we're buying loans together. Just make sure it makes sense at all your exit strategies. And I've seen certain notes come across my desk where it's like, you did not plan for this, and I think you're on the hook for a lot of money, and I'd be nervous right now. So that's a position I never want to get in as an investor, where I just want to make sure however it goes, that's fine. And the worst is always when BK, that's just part of the game. But you're just going to have to, hopefully they make payments, but I find I'm probably at a 75% they don't make payments, and they just delayed the foreclosure for however many months. But just work it into your model that you're going to have to hold if it goes to BK.
Yeah, that's the one thing with multiple exit strategies. You obviously have your one that you prefer, and then the other ones are like, okay, I can live with it if this happens.
Exactly. But the thing that kills me, and this took like a lot of, because when we first started ramping up as a family, I was buying some by myself, and it was my money. I was fine risking it. But when it's other people's money is when, it starts getting a little, you got to be more cautious. And then I was buying those properties I was talking about where it's the lower UPB, high value of property, but the interest rate was 2-something%. And then I got stuck where the max we were going to get was 3%. And I had told them we were going to get a higher rate. So now I'm kind of stuck. And that's my main concern right now. Is just what I'm trying to say is you see a lot of these beautiful properties that I would love to own the notes on, but like maybe one out of the 4 or 5 exit strategies doesn't pan out, and I have to toss it because I've been burnt over here in the past. It leads you to buying less notes, but at the end of the day, I think your portfolio is going to be healthier if you can ride all these storms.
Is there a California gold rush going on? Because it seems like everybody wants to overpay for California notes.
As long as I've been at the exchange, that's always been the case. California always goes for, we've had a couple times, it's like maybe 3 or 4 on FCI exchange where it sold for over the principal balance. So 102, 103%, and they were always California.
for non-performing?
That one was a newly originated performing.
Wow.
So he just said that the interest, it was like water, sand, his house right there on the beach, and he took the risk on it. So
wow,
that's sellers always ask if that'll happen, and it has happened, but 0.001% of the time.
Yeah, like are you seeing a ballpark like 85 cents on the dollar for just a solid season note, something like that?
I think it's even higher than that. I think people want in the 90s.
Wow. And again, like you said, it depends on what the modification rate is at, right? That's going to factor in so much. So if you do a mod,
sometimes it works out.
What's that? If you do a mod at 3%, then you're going to get hammered when you try to resell it.
Totally. But if someone wants 95, 96% and all those numbers make sense, if it makes sense, I would pay it. Yeah. If everything checked out. So I know it seems crazy when you look at those percentages, like how could I pay this much for a loan? But it's like, if this is the return, then maybe it's worth it.
Yeah.
So I try not to put myself in a box like that.
I think that's good. And I think that a lot of people are hurting themselves, a lot of investors in today's space, because all they see is that a few years ago, they used to buy that same note for 50% less than what is being offered now, versus saying, okay, well, let me perform due diligence and let me estimate a cash on cash return based on these scenarios, and let's see if the math works out. So they don't go to that point to say, well, let me see if the numbers still work out to what my expectations are.
Exactly. I'm buying some non-performers in the low 70s, and there's times where I catch myself where I'm like, this would be crazy a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
Like, no one paid in the 70s. But, I mean, it makes sense, and we're doing okay. So
Yeah.
that's just another example. It works.
So are they in California? Are those in California?
No. Non-performing in California that's a rare one to come by.
Yeah.
I like Texas a lot. That's one of my favorite states to buy in. I just find Texas is very lender-friendly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you don't see too much Texas inventory.
Yeah, that's kind of like becoming the new California, I feel. It's just so easy to foreclose, and there's a little bit of rural. I try not to buy rural either because I worry who's going to buy that REO at the end. And if it's, middle of, there's not a lot around, there's, maybe like a farmhouse or something, even though it's worth $300,000, you got to find a very special person to buy that house at the end. So I like cities where there's plenty of people around, regular house. And I find that Texas is maybe, there's some of that in Texas.
Yeah, I mean,
but I try to, the Dallases, the San Antonios, that kind of stuff.
Sure, but I mean, there's pretty much oil under every piece of property in Texas at the end of the day.
I wish.
Yes. So, but yeah, it is easy. You have to watch out for like any kind of junior lien play. I've never owned a note in Texas, so. But
I always look for what was the new one? Someone said, I think this was at the IMN that we were both at. Someone was talking about there's a new thing with solar panels, but like if there's solar panels, there can be a lien that can supersede that, kind of like the HOA liens. And I always wonder at some of these conferences how much is like the new talking point, kind of like marijuana lending was like the thing for 2 years at conferences. That's all people wanted to talk about. You don't really hear about it much anymore. And now I wonder if solar panels is the next. Like, how true is that? Is that only in certain states? I don't know, but I added it on the checklist just in case. I've yet to see someone who has solar panels on one of these notes, but maybe it's coming up. I don't know if that's the next thing.
You know, when I first started buying in 2013, everybody was talking about how the student loan debt bubble is going to burst, and that's going to replace the mortgage note industry because all the mortgage notes will have been worked out by then.
That's always, people love to talk about that when the well dries up or whatever, but I don't know. I don't see that happening. There's always going to be, non-conventional lenders doing this kind of stuff, but that kind of stuff comes through the exchange. It's not very popular, but like I've had people do loans on like dental work come through, car loans, student loans. It was semi-popular, but I personally, that'd be too much for me. I like collateral, a note, a house, I can do that kind of stuff. But if you can get it cheap enough, maybe, like we've been saying, maybe it pencils out. I don't know. But
tell me about the turnaround time. Tell me about so if a decent performing note hits the exchange, what can an investor anticipate? And they priced it fairly. What would be like a rough turnaround?
So the way it goes right now is the email will go out. So say it goes out on a Tuesday, then offers will be accepted until the next Monday. Then once those offers are accepted, we package them up into like we call it the seller packet. We send that to the seller. They're going to see every offer from every person and then the different amounts. They're going to select one seller. So this is another difference from FCI Exchange. This is something that I felt was frustrating our user base. On FCI Exchange, you could have 3 or 4 offers going at once. And if, say, you bought a BPO O&E and you're wrapping stuff up and the other guy just happened to finish faster for you, it sold. Too bad. You wasted your money. And that was something that always frustrated me on FCI Exchange. But now on this one, on exchange loans, they pick one buyer and you have exclusive due diligence for that time. So it's going to vary buyer to seller, like what the seller will allow, how long the buyer takes. It's probably going to take 7 to 10 business days is probably an average, enough to go through the documents, make sure. That's the other thing. Did the seller send you everything? Did they send you the up-to-date servicing comments? Did they get you the allonges, the assignments, all that kind of stuff? and then they'll either fade their bid or submit it. If everything checked out, they'll submit their regular bid. And then on Exchange, now we have an escrow closing service that we work with who's completely separate from Exchange. So they're licensed in all 50 states. You'll send them the money. They'll take the file. So it's not just you can choose to do that. That's for $500 each side. Or you can just close directly between the two of you for free. So you could just send your money to the seller. They'll send you the file. That's buyer beware if you want to do that. I don't advise doing that, but I wanted to give people the option to trade for free because on FCI Exchange, when you get that purchase and sell agreement, you have all their contact info right there. And what I'm pretty sure 90%, maybe that's too high, but what I'm pretty sure almost everyone did was, I'll just ask if they have any other loans and we won't pay the fee. So I wanted to give the fee free to stop that so everything went through the pipeline because I want everyone to see as many loans as possible. And what was happening is we were getting less loans because people were trying to circumvent the fee. So if you want to take the risk of sending, $50,000 to someone you just met and then hopefully they send the documents back to you, you're welcome to do that. People do it all the time. But for $500, that's less than 1%, you'll have a total licensed escrow closing service. So, but every buyer and seller can choose what they want to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you have reputable institutional sellers that they're licensed brokers or they just have a long-term, you have long-term relationships with them, there's a trust there. But if I'm just meeting Joe Blow who bought a few notes a few years ago and he or she's getting out of the biz, then yeah, I'm going to be very, very leery about sending that money.
Exactly. But yeah, I think there's people who I trade direct with because we have that reputation. I trust them. I know they're not going anywhere. So it's a case by case basis.
Yeah. No, that's interesting. So what do you see? Where do you see exchange loans going? Do you see yourself bringing in pools of notes from sellers? Do you see yourself touching on hedge funds and kind of going after bigger action?
I would love that. I would love to get into the hedge fund space. So we've already had pools on there, but what I'm seeing, and this was true on FCI Exchange as well, is when people send pools and they want an all or nothing bid, they're cutting their market down tremendously because I just like to say that our probably average buyer wants to spend about $50,000 and they typically want to do it in an IRA. That's who I assume most of the buyers are. So now if you're selling, $200,000-$300,000 pool of 5 loans, you probably just cut out the majority of people who are going to buy. So I always advise, I don't advise sellers of anything.
Yeah, there you go. Good for you.
I never give any advice, but what I prefer you to do is let people cherry pick each one.
Yeah.
So you're going to get more offers that way.
Well, that was the thing with FCI Exchange, right? You make the sale, and I've been on both receiving and I've been on both buying and selling end of FCI Exchange. And you would send the collateral file to FCI, and you guys would scan it and send it to the buyer, and you'd say, "Are you okay with this? Confirm."
Correct.
And so you almost have people, maybe they're on the newer side, but even veterans, do stupid things too. But they want you to advise them if everything looks good, right? They're looking for your counsel. We got that question
daily.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure people want like, hey, your sign of approval. And you're like, hey, we're not in that business.
Totally. And then we'd get people who are like, does this look like a good deal to you? Or just send me the good deals. And it's like, I wouldn't touch that ever. I would never answer that question.
Yeah.
But yeah, that would happen. So the reason we can't do that anymore, it worked really smooth when we could do that. We consulted with some attorneys and they said, you don't ever want to be a party to the transaction. And maybe you're leaving a door open if you're opening the file, sending them. Maybe someone can misconstrue. There's all these things of what people might be able to say, and that's one of them. So that's why you don't send the file here anymore. I don't open it. I don't look at it. So that's 100% on the closing service or you as the buyer.
Oh, when you said that outsourced escrow closing service, I knew what you were talking about. I knew. But also I see the benefit. So it's a win-win, right? It's a benefit to all parties, including yourself.
Exactly. Yeah. And now we can focus more on getting more loans. That's really what I want our only focus to be. So that's what my goal is here is I just want on those Tuesdays and Thursday tapes, I just want more and more loans where I get more and more subscribers because it helps the whole community. That's what I want is just more access to loans for everybody.
Yeah, that's great. And, because there's so many people that have shelved loans that they're just not doing anything with for whatever reason. And you need to keep your portfolio moving like a river, right? And
Totally.
you shouldn't have any dead animals in that portfolio. You need to go and bring them all in and just offload, reset. You'll refresh your whole portfolio. You'll refresh your mindset and just go after things that are living and moving and breathing. And that's how you grow things.
Because the longer you hold, it's going to hurt your resale too. Like I was looking at some notes where they just, I don't know if they put them in the corner or what, but they hadn't, like there were no servicing comments for the last year and a half. And I'm like, well then what's been going on with this? It scared me away in all honesty that this person's just been totally cold for a year and a half. What's going to happen when it transfers to me and I start making calls for the first time? I mean, it'd be great not to make your house payment for a year and a half, and now someone's trying to get money again. I just don't think it's going to go over well. So you got to keep it turning.
Yeah. Good stuff. So if they go to exchangeloans.com, right? And that's
exactly.
how they get set up, and it's pretty easy to get registered. And
all you're going to do is sign up for free. It's going to ask for your name and your email. That's going to throw you into the list. And then Tuesdays and Thursdays, you're going to start receiving the tapes.
Okay. Yeah, I think
that's how easy it is.
I mean, how can you beat that? Another avenue. So for those of you that spend, a few hours a week or what have you, sourcing, finding new deal flow, why not sign up with a source that can send you deal flow, right? On an automatic basis. So it just makes sense. So I think people should check it out. I'm on there. I registered. I think Lauren, my assistant, put on a few notes actually, just
Perfect.
this week. So, but yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing how you guys are going to grow this.
Thank you. I am too. It was a bit of a transition from FCI Exchange to this, but it's smooth sailing, and I hope 2020 is where it really kicks into gear. Yeah,
you have a great name. Did you have to pay money for that domain name?
Yes, I did.
Oh, I
had to pay up for it. There's all these things where I got it on GoDaddy, and now that was a premium domain, so that's not the $2 ones,
Oh,
so,
yeah.
And I bought exchangenotes.com as well, just in case, so that'll just forward you to loans. So it is what it is. Because everyone called FCI Exchange just the exchange, so I knew that had to be in there. So I feel like this is it's starting to catch on.
Yeah. I'm sure you'll see. Are you going to Node Expo?
I am. Yep. That's at November 1st, I want to say.
Yeah.
Something like that. Yep. I'll be there.
So are you exhibiting?
Not this time. So my dad's going to be one of the speakers, and then we're going to be just around to meet people.
Terrific. I'll see you there, and I look forward to that. If you're flying in a day early, I'm having a protege meetup with about 13 former proteges and colleagues and whatnot. So I'd love to have you pop in and just say a few words to my group on the day prior. So on the 31st of October, if you're coming in early.
So I will not be there the 31st.
Okay.
I'm flying in the day of the 1st. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, no problem. We'll catch up on November 1st then.
Sounds perfect. I look forward to it.
Yeah, thanks for your time, Tim, and I appreciate.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Take care, everyone, and be good. Safe weekend.